All right. I'm so excited to be here with our Miami Worker Center Film Saturday. We are relaunching, and today's our first day. My name is Sandra, the Interim Executive Director of Miami Worker Center. We are an action and strategy center, and we do work at the intersection of gender, race, and socioeconomic status. We've been doing amazing work in the city of Miami for about 20 years. And anything that has to do with our community, we really want to be involved. And that's why we're going to be talking about the census today. I'm going to pause for interpreters. We do have interpretation in Creole and in Spanish today, and they're going to drop the information for folks to get on as well.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es María Angélica. Mis pronombres son ella y ellex. Y hoy estamos ofreciendo interpretación en español. Estamos ofreciendo interpretación en español para elevar el compromiso del Centro de Trabajadores de Miami con la justicia lingüística, para que ustedes puedan participar y recibir esta información en el lenguaje que desean. Si ustedes quieren escuchar esta información en español, solo deben llamar al número telefónico 781-448-4126 y ponen el PIN 01634. Lo voy a poner también aquí en el chat para que ustedes lo puedan ver y puedan llamar y ahí van a poder escuchar la interpretación en español. Good morning, my name is Maria Angelica. My pronouns are she and they. And today we are offering Spanish interpretation with MARB Language Services to uphold the commitment of language justice that the Miami Worker Center has to ensure that every person can participate and have access to this information in the language of their choice. So if you'd like to hear this information in Spanish, you can call the number 781-448-4126 and the PIN is 01634. I also dropped it in the chat box so that you can see it and call in this number. And please remember to mute yourself if you choose to call into the interpretation line. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Bonjour tout le monde. Non pas m'se Loud et moi m'pral faire interprétation pour nous dans langue créole jeudi avec compagnie venante. Donc nous pral faire interprétation ça, nous travaille avec MOB Language Justice, c'est une organisation qui travaille dans la communauté pour aider tout le monde à accéder à information et participer sous table là avec dans langue sans ou pas peur parce que gon monde qui la capaider dans processus ça. Donc sous ta remet participer totalement et by opinion tout et dis ça penser ou après les dans numéro ça 781 448 40 94 et puis sa numéro PIN c'est 54 747 encore 781 448 40 94 et numéro PIN c'est 54 747. Donc relais pour capable tendre dans langue paola et si vous voulez participer tout ou dis-moi sauve Léa et m'a mettre le pour sous chat là. Merci. Good morning. My name is Lourdes and I'll be doing the interpretation into the Creole language today to allow for everyone to participate fully and totally in this activity. And if you'd like to participate or know someone that would be able to participate in Creole, please have them call 781-448-4094 and the PIN number is 54747. Again, please have everyone that you know that can participate and fully participate in their language, and we're providing the interpretation into Creole for everyone and anyone that would like to participate in Creole at 781-448-4094 and the PIN number is 54747. And thank you. Merci tout le monde and bonne journée.
Thank you so much, interpreters. And again, if you are looking for interpretation, the line can be found in the chat. Again, we are here to talk about the census, and the title of today's discussion is What's at Stake? Money and Power. And so I'm just going to popcorn some questions. Actually, I'm going to go in an introduction and have Tatiana introduce herself, followed by Izebe.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I love that we are calling this the census and tying it to money and power, because that's exactly what the census is. I am Katia Saint-Fleur. I am a partnership specialist with the Census Bureau, amongst the gazillion other things. But right now, I specialize in working with the Caribbean community in our Southeast region, which consists of Georgia, Florida, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Mississippi and Louisiana. So that's a lot of space that we cover, but the majority of our Caribbean population is definitely going to be in Georgia and Florida. And we make sure that we reach out to all populations. So there are partnership specialists that work with every group. We have Hispanic partnership specialists. We have partnership specialists that specialize in working with faith-based communities. And I did this in 2010, and I'm doing this again in 2020. It's work that I absolutely love doing. And I'm really excited this morning to really get to the cusp of what the census is.
Xavier, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I definitely cannot hear you. But good morning. My name is Izebe. I am a community advocate and community engagement manager for an agency called Catalyst Miami. We've worked for 20 plus years in Miami-Dade County, working to serve families, to provide resources that will allow us a better frame of life, a better quality of life. And so I'm excited to be here to talk about the 2020 census. We have had an opportunity to be in several communities that would be considered hard to count. And so I can't wait to share our experience and our story.
Sure. So let's get right into it. This year, like every other 10 years, the census is an opportunity for everyone to get counted. So everyone who is a human being in the United States wants to be counted. And I'm going to ask Katia a very important question. Why should we be counted? What is the purpose of all of this? People are like, I don't know about this census stuff. Tell us, why is it important for us to be counted and for us to respond to the census?
Well, the census is something. First, let's just give a brief background, just in case there's anybody on that doesn't know. So the census is actually something that is mandated by the Constitution. We do this every 10 years. We count every single person living and breathing in the United States. And we do that for a multitude of reasons. But the most important reasons that we do it is to know how many people who live here, how are we going to allocate resources, and how are we going to draw lines for political power, right? If you have kids, if you need law enforcement, if you need to go to the hospital, if you need to make sure that your neighborhood grows in a way that you are comfortable with, if you want to make sure that you have potholes and the way that we forecast everything that we do, when we do allocations for education, there is not a single thing that you do on a daily basis that isn't tied to census numbers. Miami Worker Center, when you guys are applying for grants and the way that you assist people, you use census data. Census data is the most, how do you say? Forgive me, it's Saturday morning. It's the most trusted data that we use.
I would say most accurate, right?
Most accurate. It's the most trusted. It's how we know how we're going to allocate. I can't stress this enough. It's how we know how we're going to divide resources in our community, right? When they are forecasting the needs for our communities, this is what we do. We live in South Florida. We know that, for instance, when we have a hurricane, they send a certain amount of resources down here. Well, they send those resources based on census numbers, right? We know how many, if it says that 100,000 people live in a particular city, they're going to send enough resources for 100,000 people. Now, if that city didn't make sure that they were counted and they're actually 120,000, you're going to have 20,000 people that are short of resources. And that's kind of that's the most basic way to explain how we end up with shortages of resources in communities. It's really by not being counted. It's not being able to help those who help you, right? If Miami worker center is helping people and they need those numbers and they need to know how many people live somewhere, the best way that we can help us, is to make sure that we're counted.
Absolutely. I think let's talk a little bit more about what you mentioned some, but folks don't actually know what it means for the money to kind of like trickle down from the federal government to the state government, to the county, to the local municipalities. And so for some cities, I know based on the number of individuals that are counted, they can or cannot get CDBG funds. And you know what those funds are used for on the local level. Some cities are looking to hit a number that they know already exists in their community, and because of the response, they may or may not get additional fundings. Can you speak more to that?
Sure. I think one of the cities that I'm familiar with that definitely wants to hit a particular number is North Miami Beach, right? I believe it's 50,000 plus one.
Yeah, I believe so.
So North Miami Beach knows that they have more than 50,000 residents, and they have to provide resources for more than 50,000 residents. And they get extra resources from the federal government via CDBG funds that would help them with small businesses, that would help them with more roads, that would help them with childcare services. All of these things that they could do to help benefit their communities and not have to go directly from the county to them, they could get directly from the federal government. Well, if they can't prove through census numbers that they have 50,000 plus one, then they don't get that. You can't say, oh, well, we think we have 50,000. We know we provide resources for more than 50,000. We know more than 50,000 use our water or use the light in this area. Those things do not matter. The one thing that matters is that they actually have a head count when those census numbers come out that say they have 50,000 plus one. If 50,000 is a number, but I think it is. It is the most trusted data. It is the data that a federal government uses. It's the data that granting services use. It's the data that there just isn't. The school board uses the data when they're allocating how many slots they provide for Head Start. They do those based on census predictions. So if the numbers aren't right at the beginning, then it's impossible for them to make the right predictions to allocate the right amount of seats. That's why you have Head Start programs that have 300 student waiting lists. That could be something as simple as 1,000 people not filling out their census forms. It's so easy. It literally takes you about 5 to 10 minutes. It's extremely safe, and it is extremely important that we all do it and that we all tell our neighbors to do it. We tell our friends to do it. We get everybody engaged as much as possible because we have to live here. You get one shot to do this, Sandra. We can't, you know what I mean? Like in 2 years, you don't get to say, oh my God, I forgot to fill out the census. Let's do it again. I now understand how important it is. I got a crew over here and we all understand how important it is. You get one shot. And because of COVID, the amount of time that they allowed it for folks to respond has been extended. So if you haven't done it, I mean, we are begging you, we are imploring you to do it now. You get one shot. There are very few things you get one shot at, and this is the one that you get one shot at. And you may not think it's important today. You might be 19 years old, right? In 10 years, you'll be 29. And between that time, you would have had children. You may need Head Start. You may need funding. You may need to go to the hospital. You're going to the hospital. You don't know why they don't have enough beds. They don't have enough beds because there isn't enough head count to predict how many people you need in this resource. Is your community going to need a new clinic? Is your community going to need new healthcare resources, healthcare availability? All of these things are based on census numbers. When we look at our communities, and when I say our communities, I mean Black and brown communities, minority communities, we know that our communities look very different than other communities, right? There are communities that have like 90% response rates. And let me tell you, they look very different than the communities that have 40% response rate and 50% response rate. And right now, Black and brown communities, especially in South Florida, are extremely undercounted. We are not responding at the rate that we need to respond if we're going to get our fair share of the resources. We all pay into this pie. And making sure we're counted is one of the best ways to ensure that we get what we put in, because you're saying, hey, look, I'm here.
Right.
It's your way of raising your hand and say, hey, we divvying out this pie. I'm here. Give me mine. I want mine. I want to make sure I get mine for me. I want to make sure I get for my grandmother. I want to make sure I get for my kids, my future kids, my grandkids. I want to make sure that my community has what it needs to sustain its growth.
Right. I think that's very important. I like to even make it even plainer for like folks who are looking at what are the specific things we can like really see. And so you talked about hospital beds. You know, right now there's a COVID pandemic where, you know, the supplies or the beds or the ventilators that is made available is really about the count that exists. So how many people the government thinks exist based on the census response or what is available in terms of resources. We're now going into hurricane season, right? And so if folks are not counted based on a 2010 census, we don't know. There might be a number of folks who we won't have enough resources for them because they were not counted in 2010. And so we're talking about 2020 right now. From 2020 to 2030, we need to make sure that we're counted so that the things that we know will come up in these 10 years, we're accounted for. That means education. Do we have enough schools? Do we have enough clinics? Do we have enough police departments? I mean, police is kind of crazy right now, but do we have enough any kind of social services, I would say as well. So when you think about Head Start, when you think about federally qualified health centers, all these things have to do with census data. What is a hard to count community, Katya? And who kind of makes up those demographics?
That's such a good question, Sandra. So what we call a hard to count community are communities that historically don't perform well, that don't respond to the census. And I keep going back to Black and brown communities where we have a language barrier. And in South Florida, a very interesting fact is, I think it only takes about 25% of a population to speak a language other than English to be considered hard to count. In Miami-Dade County, 60% of Miami-Dade County speaks a language other than English at home. So by pure virtue, the entire county is hard to count. So things like being afraid that the information is going to be shared, right? We're not going to play like we don't know that we have communities that do not trust the federal government, that do not trust the police, that are afraid and that live in the shadows. What we want everyone to know is census data is protected data. Title 13 protects all information that you share with us. We cannot share personal identifying information with anyone. Meaning, if I fill out the census and my name is Katya St. Fleur, I live on 123 Main Street. There is absolutely no way that by responding to the census that you're going to know that Katya St. Fleur lives on 123 Main Street. What you're going to know is someone who lives on the block that consists of 123 Main Street is between the ages of 30 and 40 and an African-American female. Those are the things that you're going to know. And another thing that you're going to know this time is really important, Sandra, and quite historic, is you're also going to know that Katya St. Fleur, who, well, not Katya St. Fleur, but someone who lives on block 123 Main Street is not only Black, but is of Haitian descent. So for the first time in the census, if you check Black and you self-identify as Black, you are able to say, I am of Haitian descent, I am of Jamaican descent, I am of Trinidadian descent, I'm of Nigerian descent. This is something that a lot of community activists fought for, and it'll give us a greater picture of what the diaspora actually looks like when we say the Black community in the United States. So that is something that I talk to everyone about. I make sure that people know we want to have a clear snapshot, engage. Please let us know that you are here, not just for us, but like really for the community. Right? We want to know, like, I was going to start talking in Creole, but we want to know how many people live here. We want to know that I want to know that I got 200,000 people who live in my community. And when those federal dollars start to come down, there's enough for 200,000 people, because I do not want anyone else to start picking and choosing who gets resources because there aren't enough, you know?
Oh, that's amazing. I think that is like, if that's a bumper sticker, something that people want to hold on to, is that if there's 200,000 people who live in Katya's community and only 150,000 of those have responded, now put our government, local government, or whoever the decision makers are, in a predicament where they have to pick and choose or come up with eligibility requirements on how to distribute these resources. And we don't want to put folks in those kinds of predicaments. We want to make sure that everyone that the resources that are available really are allocated based on the total population and not some false number. I think what you mentioned as well in terms of ethnicity really matters too, because I think that how you outreach, how you communicate, the resources that specific communities needs are not the same for others. I think that the way you know, sometimes let's say Caribbean Blacks or, you know, African Americans may not be the same terminology that you use. I often think about healthcare specifically. You know, when folks are talking about healthcare diets, you know, and you need to know what demographics you're talking about, because everyone doesn't eat the same thing, right?
Exactly.
And so,
exactly. You need to know when you're creating communications, right? Like I said, I'm Haitian American. We need to know how much literature we should create to speak to a certain group. How much literature we need to create that is in Spanish. You guys, I mean, this is amazing because you also have interpreters in both languages to speak to your community. We want to be able to tailor fit our government, our dollars to us as much as possible. And by raising your hand and saying, hey, I'm counted, I'm here, that's the number one thing that you can do for your community every 10 years is making sure that the federal government knows that you're here, your local government knows that you're here. The next thing I'd love to transition into, Sandra, is talking about representation and what counted on the census means when it comes to representation. There's so much going on right now, right? And we have the attention of the right? Yes, it's hot in the streets. So, and in the midst of all of that, we need folks to understand that responding to the census is just as important as making sure that your local government hears your voice, because it's another way of having a voice. It's another way of saying, I want equal representation. Every 10 years, the Constitution mandates that we reapportion the Congress. And reapportionment just simply means that you look at the population, you see where people are, and you say, these group of people need representation. If that's not being civically engaged by saying, I need representation, and the more of you that live in a community, the more you're able to say, hold up, wait a minute. We deserve a little bit more representation over here. And before you get to the part where you can even vote, you got to know there has to be an ability for people to vote for. There's a seat that you got to be able to vote for. And when you start redistricting these lines, they can only count you, and your community can only grow if you're here, if you're counted. You can't say, well, we need more seats and we need more people who look like us if we didn't count in the census. It just doesn't, it doesn't miraculously work like that. There's a starting point. There's a method to the way that these things work. And our job is to educate everybody that the very first step that you take is making sure that you're counted so that your community can have the proper representation that it deserves.
And as always, Florida is always a battleground state. Florida is slated to gain 2 seats, right? And that's what folks are saying based on population predictions. But again, if we're not counted, we won't get that representation. And that representation in Congress looks like we have people who's going to vote yes for protections. Let's say, for instance, we had a Florida senator who said we shouldn't get unemployment. That if folks got unemployment during this pandemic, that they wouldn't go back to work. We don't want folks like that to represent us. We want folks who understand our communities, who are from our communities, to really be able to speak for us in these places and in Congress. Let's talk about also, how do people take the census? Where should they go? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's the part where I get a little hype. So, because it's so easy, right? Like, you literally go online and you go to my 2020 census.gov and you fill out the application. And if you are not tech savvy and you want to just use the phone, you can call. You can call the 1-800 number. There's a 1-800 number. There's a 1-800 Creole number, which is 844-477-2020. You call the number, and there are people who can help you fill it out over the phone. You go online. You can do it on your phone, Sandra.
Right.
Like I've walked people through it over the phone. Hey, you go online, you can do this. And there are organizations just like your organization that are helping people. There is no excuse. If you want to call the 1-800 number to get assistance, they help you. If you want to call and say, hey, look, I want to fill this out, you can get it that way. They've at this point sent out invitations. If you don't have your invitation, don't be alarmed if you log on and it says and asks you for a code. Just skip right past it, and then you can put your address and then you can fill it out. If you feel as though maybe someone has forgotten to add your information to the census when they did their census, say for instance, Miami, we have very unique housing, right? You know, no shame. My mom's garage is a whole efficiency. So there's someone who lives there. She had to make sure that she counted him in her census because it's important. That person lives and breathes in the United States. We do not care. We do not share this information with your local cities. We don't care how you built your extra housing. We just want to know that you've counted every single person that lives at your address.
That's an important component of it, because I think a lot of people think the census is based on family ties, but actually when it comes to when they mail you the piece of mail to tell you to respond, it actually is just mailed to the residents. So folks who live in, everyone that lives in a household, no matter what the family ties are supposed to respond. The other point is that even if you're not a citizen, even if you are a permanent resident and you have TPS or you have no status at all, these folks still can also respond to the census, right?
Right, of course. Please, no, not they can still. They are. It is an obligation to respond to the census, because regardless of your status, you still live here. You still use the resources. Right. If you have kids, they still go to school here. If you get sick, you still go to the hospital. If something happens, you still got to call the ambulance. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you get pregnant, you still got to go to the hospital and have a baby. Like you still need resources. You still need to go to places that help you. You still need the amount of work that is done for everyone. Again, I can't stress it. The way that census numbers affects our daily life, right? When you look around and you say, wait, my community doesn't have a grocery store. Well, that's because there's a business somewhere that's looking at the census data and they're saying, oh, there's not enough people here for us to build a business. We have to make sure that we are counted. It is the way that we say we are here. It is the way that we have a voice. It is the way that we ensure our voice. It is the way that we get our fair share of that pie. That pie's, I was about to start talking a little different. That pie gonna get split. They're gonna cut the pie. It's our job that when they have cut this pie, that they know, I mean, my slice.
Yes.
And that's what the census essentially is. Your way of making sure that you get your fair share of that pie. And when they are splitting that pie, that you have your fair share of representation.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Katya. If there are any questions from the interpretation lines, let us know. I'm following the live comments. We don't have any questions yet. I also want to go into the point that you just made. There are a lot of folks who are maybe undocumented, who have CPS or just permanent residents, don't necessarily have an opportunity to vote in any elections. But the census might, if you want to look at it that way, give them an opportunity to have their voices heard in a way that they're not able to always have their voices heard.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's another opportunity for us to look at it. Like for folks who are not able to vote in the traditional way in our communities, here's another way to make sure that you folks know you are here, but also make sure that you have representation for the community that you live in. Are there any questions? I'm going to open up. We're at the halfway point.
This is Saturday morning. I think someone's knocking on my door. Give me 2 seconds.
Go ahead. And I'll keep talking about the census and why I think it's important. And so in 2010, there was an undercount in a lot of the South Florida counties. And I think that what that undercount looks like is that there were not enough schools. There were not enough resources for social services programs such as Head Start, such as housing. When we think about the housing waivers that exist and how there's always a long line for folks waiting to get into affordable housing, we often think about, was there an accurate count on people who live in that community? there's also an opportunity for us to think of what emergency services look like. And Florida, specifically during this time, we're, watching what the Hurricane Center is saying. And they're saying this is slated to be an active season. And so this active season means that if something were to happen, we want to make sure that we have enough resources come down based on the numbers that we have. I'm going to say hi to Carla. Carla is a staff member with Miami Workers Center. She's asking, families with mixed status, is it okay to count undocumented family members? Kasia, you want to take that?
Yes. And not only is it okay, we really would like for everyone to act as activists. Once you understand that the census data is protected, right? We can't share this information with anybody else. By law, you cannot share this information with any governmental agency. There's no personal identifying information that's shared. And we ask that everybody share that with everyone. We all live here together. It's our job to make sure that our communities grow and that we get, again, our fair share. And if you know of anybody who has undocumented, who is undocumented or has an undocumented household, and at this point they may have done the census, but they forgot to add a person, please add that person, right? Like, it isn't just about, there's so many ways the census data is used. A good example is Hurricane Katrina. We're talking about hurricanes. When Hurricane Katrina happened, all of these families lost their documentation. Mm-hmm. They had no way to prove who they were. They had no way to prove their age. They had no way to prove anything, right? Because you've lost everything. The one way that people were able to get driver's licenses and to get passports again was to submit to the Census Bureau for proof that they had themselves been a part of the census. Wow. And they were able to get documentation from the Census Bureau that then allowed them to get driver's licenses and passports. It's a way to, you never know what's going to happen in the future. If you are undocumented right now, when you'll have to prove maybe you have been here for a certain amount of time, and using census data allows you to retrieve that information in a safe manner. You have to prove there's a step to it, but once they give you that documentation, you can use it to regain your identification, to prove that you've been living here, to show your age, because it will say in 2020, Kasia was 25 years old. So when we think about the census, think about it also as a way of ensuring that you're counted, that you're here, in a safe way of making sure that you do that. Because again, I can't stress this enough. This information is not shared with the police. This information is not shared with ICE. It is not shared with your local government to say, oh, they have too many people living in their households. That information is protected by the Constitution. It is safe. It's easy to do the census. And it's one of the most important things you could do for your community.
I would add also, there was a big kind of fight to make sure that the citizen question was left off this questionnaire. And I think that people felt like if that question was asked on the census, that people would feel uncomfortable if they were undocumented. I think it's only right for us who have mixed status families to say, by responding to the census, to say, we appreciate that fight that was made to make sure that we felt safe. And so we're going to also up it and respond in a meaningful way, because we don't want folks to be fighting on our behalf and we then don't do our part, right? So our part, so they took it all the way to the Supreme Court and asked for this question to be left off so that mixed status families can feel safe. And we already knew that this information is safe because it can't be shared. But I also think that our responsibility now is to ensure that we take it, right? And that we make sure that our families are safe. Kasia, you want to talk a little bit about where the response rates are right now? How we doing in Miami-Dade County? What is it looking like?
I wish there was a way for me to share my screen because I could walk everybody through finding the response rates.
I think you can.
Hold. So when I did that, did you lose me?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to go to the census website. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see if we could do this, and this will be great. Great. Share screen. Can you see it? There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Can you make it a bit bigger?
Can I make it bigger?
Yeah.
Oh,
there it is. Yes.
Okay. So, well, when you go to 2020 census.gov and just do a quick and you do / response rate right here, we go down and this tells you in a real time how your state is doing. So the national response rate is 60.9%. I'm going to go here and I'm going to put Florida. It's going to update it for me and it tells me that Florida is at 58.4%.
What does that mean?
58.4% response rate means that 58.4% of the people in Florida have chosen to self-respond.
Mm-hmm.
That's important because self-responding, guys, means that nobody's going to come knocking on your door. It is the obligation of the federal government to have a census. And by obligation, we mean they take this very seriously, and it's important. They do their part. And if you don't want someone to come knocking on your door in a couple weeks, and you're uncomfortable with having folks come and being in your space with everything that's happening, we still got to conduct a census. So the best way to ensure that no one comes into they're not going to come inside your home, but they knock on your door and they come to make sure that you responded. We know by households who haven't responded. We don't know your name, but we know that 123 or 124 Main Street hasn't responded. So someone's going to come to 124 Main Street and it's called non-response follow-up. And that comes after self-response. And self-response, again, is the percentage of people who say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and fill out my census on my own. I don't need anybody to come help me. I got this. If I need help, I can call the 1-800 hotline and I can get assistance. If you do not respond, someone will be visiting you. And they can come visit you up to 14 times. So trust and believe, we do everything that we can to make sure that the census happens. So I'm going to go back to this map. So it tells you that the state of Florida is at 58.4%. The national self-response rate is 60.9%. So Florida is a little bit below the national response rate. Now we're going to go to county. I'm going to go down to Miami-Dade County. This is going to allow me to see what is the response rate in Miami-Dade County. Well, the response rate in Miami-Dade County is 55.9%. Only a little over half of Miami-Dade County has participated in the census so far. So we still have a lot of work to do. And for organizations such as yours, Sandra, you can see when I scroll over it, it tells me that the total is 55.9 and 44.6% of those people did it over the internet. So the other 10% probably did it over the phone. Folks who said, you know what, I don't know how to fool up with this internet stuff. I'm just going to give a call, or they called and had a form mailed to them and they mailed it back. But the majority of people have been participating in Miami-Dade County over the internet. Now, what I love about this is not only can I go by county, I can go by city. So give me a city that you'd like to see how they're doing, Sandra.
City of Miami.
All right.
Oh, that way? Oh, there it is. Go up. It's Miami.
Here we go.
Oh.
So city of Miami is doing even worse than Miami-Dade County at 47.3%.
So let's talk about who makes up City of Miami.
So
off the top of my head, there's Little Haiti, Overtown, Liberty City, Little Havana, that core City of Miami, and then there's unincorporated Dade that makes up City of Miami.
That makes up City of Miami. I went and I clicked on Census Tract, right? And it gives you down here, if you guys can see, it gives you an idea of what it looks like. So these areas are shaded. So by census tract, which means by small blocks, I can go in and see what areas actually need more help than others. If you're more familiar with the city of Miami than I am, here is a tract here in the middle, which is census tract 28 in Miami, Florida. Their response rate is 26%.
Wow.
Now, when you get over here in these blue areas, the response rates are much better, right? So this area is 63%. You have an area here that's another 63, 67% when it comes down to zip code 33133. They're doing very well. But over here, in the heart of the city, is really where we have a major problem.
And 33133 is Coral Gables.
Right. So do you remember when I said that there are certain areas that do better in self-responding and you can see it in their community? Well, this shows it to you. The numbers don't lie. We have a thing that we say in the census where you can do a lot of funny, fuzzy things, but numbers don't lie.
Right.
So if I also wanted to, what's another city that is, let's do Miami Gardens.
Yes.
There we go. Miami Gardens is at 60.3%, 61.5%.
They're doing all right.
They are doing a really good job. They still have some areas here that need some improvement, but all in all, the city of Miami Gardens is doing a really good job in responding. I know that their city has a robust census plan. It's been a very important initiative of the mayor and their council. So they've been doing a lot of work, a lot of grassroots work, engaging their faith-based communities and their grassroots communities.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see how the city of Hialeah is doing.
Yes.
And Sandra, I'm a numbers nerd. We can do this all day. So Hialeah is at
someone just asked Aventura after. Go ahead.
All right, sure. We're at 62.3% in Hialeah. So Hialeah is doing a pretty decent job. Again, guys, our goal is really to make sure that we get as close to 100% as possible. So next city we want to look at is Aventura. And guys, you can go to this website as well. If you, So Aventura is at 45.7%, which is extremely low. And coastal cities in Miami-Dade County are having, the response rates are pretty low right now because we got to also think about some of the things that would make a coastal city hard to count. You have a lot of high rises. You have a lot of people who live here seasonally. We have a lot of people who may be stuck somewhere and aren't traveling due to COVID, but they live in Aventura. So Aventura as a city will have, hello?
No, I'm here. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll have to look into how to engage their residents to see how they can get as close to 100% of a response rate as possible, or else census workers are gonna have to go on. This is an amazing tool. Sandra, you have my contact information. I don't mind sharing it. If anybody wants me to go through this with your organization or come in, give a presentation to your city, I can be reached. My number's public. So it's 404-451-8922. And as we go into the last stretch of this census outreach, we can really help communities tailor their program and look and go into the communities where you have the largest problems and the lowest response rates to get the job done.
Thank you so much for pulling that up. We have about, let's say 10 minutes left before we need to wrap up. If there aren't any questions from the interpreter lines, let us know. But if there are any questions, let us know from the interpretation lines. We can take them as well. But what we want to make sure folks leave with, like if you have to bumper sticker, like, here's what you all need to do. What is it?
Go respond now. Call your friends. When you see your neighbors, everybody in my neighborhood now takes a walk. I mean, be that neighbor. Hey, did you respond to the census? Hey, did you respond to the census? And the thing that I would really like to stress, we're very good at complaining on the tail end. We're very good at saying, how come we don't have this? Why does this neighborhood look different? We just showed you what Coral Gables response rate looks like. And we showed you what the center of the city of Miami's response rate looks like. The people in Coral Gables have decided that they need to be counted and they want their fair share of that pie when it's time for it to be sliced up. What I would leave people with is the pie gets sliced whether we like it or not. And it's going to be sliced based on census data. It's going to be sliced based on census numbers. Census is about two things: money and power. You cannot have those two things without one or the other, and they all start with census data. They have to reapportion. Is going to happen anyway. All of these things that happen based on census data will happen whether we participate or not. And this is our time as a people, as a community, to raise our hands and not only protest and not only say the things that people are out there doing, but let's start by being counted. When it comes time to cut these resources and slice this thing up, do you want somebody else determining whether or not you get it because you weren't counted? I don't want anybody else to make those decisions for me. It's easy, it's safe, and it's one of the most important things you're going to do, and you only get one shot to do it. We don't get to do this again in 2 years.
Thank you so much for that, Katya. And I agree with everything you said. I think that I want to talk about our communities who often feel like we don't have enough resources. We feel like we're left out. We feel like there's development in other communities and there's no development in ours. We're often sad, disappointed, enraged about what we see in our communities. And I think it's time for us to not only be on the defense, but also to be on the offense this time. And the offense looks like that we do not only respond to the census, that we understand that this is data that's used for every program that you can think about. And I also want to talk to folks who have students who are going to college. You're talking about Pell Grant numbers, right? You know, folks who get Pell Grant, who help them pay for college, they need those data to know how many students are going to college who may need Pell Grant. And so let's get on the offense as well. You know, they say defense wins games, but you also need an offense. And so the offense is that you have to play your part. You have to respond. People need to know that you're here. And not only you, we need to make it a collective thing that we're asking our neighbors, we're asking our brothers, we're asking our cousins, did you respond? Because the neighborhoods that only have, let's say, 30% response rate, 40% response rate, that impacts the entire community. So when they don't respond, you don't get what you need as well. Your kids are in overcrowded schools. You can't get into Head Start programs. The hospitals don't have enough beds for you, even if you got yourself counted, because your neighbors didn't do their jobs. You're now in a predicament where there's not enough resources for you and your families. So it's extremely important, especially right now, what we're seeing in this country, for us to play our offensive, for us to do our offense work as well. So we know it's important to be applying pressure, but we also know that it's important for us to do what we know is our civic duty. That is like a call to action. If you have not completed your census today, my2020census.gov is a website. I also have the phone number that you can call. I believe 1-800-923-8282, 1-800-923-8282. And if you go to the census.gov website, all the languages that you need help in, they can help you in your preferred language. And so make sure that there is no excuse that you, your families, and your communities make sure there's not an excuse for you all not to be counted this year. It goes into, when is the cutoff? Because actually by now we should have been done. It's the pandemic that allowed it to be not done in terms of self-response. So When is the cutoff date, Katya?
I'll be fair, Sandra. I like to tell. I don't give a date.
Good for you.
My date is today.
That's
The
it.
time is now. It's now. It's yesterday. It's now. It's today. Like they just put it on the screen again. It's 1-800-923-8282. You can get census support. You can ask for a number of languages from English to Spanish to Portuguese. You name it. We have tried to cover the gamut. If there's a language that you speak that you don't get any help, reach out and we'll get you the assistance that you need to fill out the census. The cutoff was yesterday. Get it done ASAP. This is the most important thing that you do for your community, and you only get one chance to do it every 10 years. There is no makeup for this. When you mentioned I love that you mentioned financial aid resources and federal grant dollars. They base a budget of how much they're going to give. And then if that budget, it's why it ends up being so little for everyone, because the budget is based on census numbers. And if the census numbers are 25% less than what they actually need, the kids who need it the most end up having to split those resources amongst themselves, and it's not enough for them. And it becomes a burden for the family. So again, when these budgets are being considered and money is being allocated, it's allocated based on a head count. And it's the head count that happens every 10 years. It's called the decennial census. We get one shot, we get one chance. It's your opportunity to be counted.
You know, I forgot my favorite thing to say, and I'm going to say it. You know, every time I get paid, you know, there's something called taxes that get removed, and it's not a little bit of taxes; it's actually a lot for me, and it often hurts me. But I know that it's removed. Go to everything that I need. It goes to my retirement. It goes to these systems and these programs that we're talking about. When those taxes go to the federal government and we're not counted, that means our dollars don't come back to us. That's what that means. That means all of our taxes that goes to the federal government, they will make a decision based on the numbers that they have, the folks who have responded, on how those monies are distributed and comes back to the state and the communities that you all live in. I don't think anyone wants their money not to come back to them in their community. And I'm not saying in our pockets. We're talking about the roads. We're talking about housing. We're talking about all these things that make our communities vibrant and thrive. And so it's important for us to think about, look, your money is going to the government. And if you're not counted, it will go to the communities that are. And they will have resources and you won't have resources. And that's the way that pie will get sliced. That is, I think we're good. Thank you so much, Katya. She's with the Bureau doing amazing things in our communities. You can reach her, contact the Miami Worker Center if you have any questions about the census. And if you want to reach Katya too, we can put you in contact with her. We really appreciate you all. From here, we will go to our Fem Power Fellowship that is specifically for member leaders. So we're creating leaders who want to learn more about issues in our community. We're going to be talking about how to canvas for communities, how to understand policies that impact your daily lives, how to talk to media and communicate, how to understand county, city budgets. And so that's what we're going to go into. That's a small private group. Then we're going to be back at 2:00 with climate. It is hurricane season. We want to understand what's happening in our communities. So we have a whole day of programming for you all. Stay with us. We appreciate you and welcome back, Fem Saturdays.
Thank you for having me, Sandra.
I love you, Katya. Thank you so much.